My husband told me he was moving to London for a 2-year work assignment. I saw him off in tears, but the moment I got back home, I transferred every single cent out of our joint account, $75,000 in total. The very next day, I marched into the courthouse and filed for divorce. Terminal 4 at JFK International Airport was packed with people. I gripped David's hand tightly, tears streaming down my face uncontrollably. "David, do you really have to go for 2 whole years?" I asked, my voice choked with emotion. David gently wiped my tears away, sounding just as reluctant. "Emma, you know how important this project is for my career. 2 years will fly by. I'll FaceTime you all the time, but I'm going to miss you so much." I buried my face in his chest. He patted my back softly. "Silly girl, I'll miss you too. But this is a massive opportunity for our future. When I get back, we'll have enough money to put a down payment on a beautiful brownstone in a great neighborhood." The boarding announcement echoed through the terminal. David kissed my forehead deeply. "Wait for me." I stood frozen, watching his back disappear through the security checkpoint until my vision blurred with tears. Travelers rushed past me. No one paid any mind to the woman crying quietly in the corner. I dried my eyes with a tissue, took a deep breath, and turned to leave the airport. In the back of the Uber, I rested my head against the window, watching the familiar streets of New York City blur by. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Seeing someone off?" "You look heartbroken. Boyfriend or husband?" "My husband," I replied softly. The driver sighed. "It's tough for young couples to live apart for work. But don't worry. A good man always comes back." I managed a faint smile but didn't answer. The car pulled up to our condo building in Park Slope, Brooklyn. I paid the fare and walked into the home David and I had shared. The empty apartment echoed with my footsteps. I paused in the entryway, staring at the slippers he had left by the door, and a bitter laugh escaped my lips. I kicked off my heels, walked barefoot into the living room, and collapsed onto the sofa. Pulling my phone from my purse, I opened my banking app. The balance on our joint account was displayed clearly. $85,480. $2.17. It was our entire life savings from 5 years of marriage. My paycheck was directly deposited there every month. David always said it was better for our financial planning. I never questioned it because I trusted him. I trusted our marriage. Until 3 days ago. That afternoon, I had left work early to surprise David. As I approached his office building in the financial district, I saw him walking out of an upscale coffee shop with another woman. Her arm was linked with his, and they were laughing intimately. I froze. David didn't see me. He walked her to the curb and hailed a yellow cab. Just before she got in, David leaned down and kissed her on the cheek. I hid behind a large oak tree, my heart squeezed so tight it felt like a vice. The pain knocked the wind out of me. When the cab drove off, David turned and headed back toward his office. I didn't confront him. I took the long way home. That night, David walked in, acting completely normal. "Hey Emma, sorry, long meeting at the office. Have you eaten?" He walked over and kissed my cheek as if nothing was wrong. I fought the urge to pull away. "I already ate," I said, forcing a smile. "I left a plate in the oven for you. You're the best, honey." He smiled and went to the kitchen to heat up his dinner. I sat in the living room, staring at his back as he moved around, and suddenly, he looked like a complete stranger. After dinner, he casually dropped the bomb. "Oh, by the way, Emma, the company landed a huge project in London. They want me to spearhead it. I might have to be based there for 2 years." My hand trembled, almost knocking over my glass of water. 2 years? That's a really long time. Yeah, it's a long-term project, but it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. My boss said if I nail this, I'm guaranteed a VP promotion when I get back. His eyes sparkled with excitement. "And what about me?" I asked, my voice small. David came over and wrapped his arm around my shoulders. "You keep working here. I'll send you money every month for expenses. 2 years will be over before you know it. When I come back, we'll be set for life." I leaned against his shoulder and closed my eyes. Tears silently slipped down my cheeks. In that moment, everything made sense. He wasn't going to London for a project. He was moving there with that woman. The work assignment was nothing but an elaborate lie. The next day, I took a personal day. I needed the truth. I hired a private investigator a college friend had recommended. His name was Marcus Thorne, a man in his late 30s, professional and discreet. All right, Mrs. Evans, what exactly do you need me to look into? He asked as we sat across from each other in a quiet Manhattan diner. I told him everything, including the scene I had witnessed. Marcus nodded. I understand. In cases of infidelity, there's usually a paper trail. Give me a week. You'll have a full report. Thank you. I stood up to leave. Mrs. Evans, Marcus called out. Sometimes the truth is brutal. Are you prepared for what I might find? I gave him a stiff smile. No matter how brutal it is, I need to know. For the next few days, I lived a lie. I went to work, came home, cooked for David, and we chatted about our days. On the outside, we were the same loving couple. But inside, my heart was dead. David was busy preparing for his trip, booking flights, packing, sorting out his visa. He was completely absorbed in the thrill of his new life, entirely blind to the shift in my demeanor. A week later, Marcus met me at the same diner. He handed me a thick manila envelope. Here is the report. I took a deep breath and opened it. Inside was a thick stack of photos and documents. Every image was a dagger to my heart. David and the woman holding hands while shopping on Fifth Avenue. David and the woman checking into the Greenwich Hotel. David and the woman having an intimate dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant. My hands shook. Marcus's voice seemed to come from far away. Her name is Jessica Cole. She's the new marketing director at your husband's firm. They've been seeing each other for 3 months. According to my findings, your husband is indeed going to London, but not for work. He and Miss Cole are emigrating. He's already purchased a luxury flat in Kensington, and the down payment came straight from your joint account. The room spun. Are you all right? Do you need some water? Marcus asked with concern. I waved him off, forced myself to calm down, and kept reading. The file included screenshots of their text messages. Jessica. Just a little longer. Once I leave Emma settled, we can finally be together openly. David. I'm counting down the days, babe. Plus, I've already moved almost all the money into the joint account. Jessica. She's just one woman. What can she do, David? David. Exactly. Her entire paycheck has gone into that account for years while I've been investing it. She barely has any personal savings. She won't be able to fight back much during the divorce. Jessica. So when are you going to tell her? David. There's no need. I'll go to London first. After 6 months, I'll tell her I met someone over there and want a divorce. That way she won't make a scene. Since I'm the one initiating it from afar, she'll look crazy if she fights it. Jessica. You've got it all figured out. When do we start decorating our London flat? David. The minute I land. Don't worry, we're going to have a beautiful life. I closed the folder, shut my eyes, and took a shuddering breath. 5 years of marriage. It had all been a meticulously planned scam. What are you going to do? Marcus asked, sliding a glass of water toward me. I opened my eyes, my gaze hardened. I'm going to transfer every last cent out of that joint account. It's a joint account. Legally, I have full access to those funds, I said with a cold laugh. Besides, the vast majority of that money came from my salary. He thinks I'm some idiot who's going to sit here waiting for him to come back and dump me. He's dreaming. Marcus nodded. I understand. If you need legal representation, I can recommend an excellent divorce attorney. Thank you, I'll need it. Leaving the diner, I didn't go home. I went straight to Chase Bank. The teller looked surprised by the amount I wanted to move. Ma'am, this is a substantial sum. Are you sure you want to transfer the entire balance? I'm sure. To my personal checking account. All right. Please enter your PIN. I typed the numbers and watched the screen flash. Transfer successful. A wave of profound relief washed over me. $75,000. All safely in my personal account. It was what I deserved. It was my blood, sweat, and tears from the past 5 years. When I got home, David wasn't back yet. I sat on the couch and began piecing together the last 5 years. We met through a mutual friend. I had just graduated and was working as a copywriter at a mid-sized ad agency. David was 3 years older, already a project manager at a multinational tech firm. He was mature, stable, and charming. He pursued me relentlessly, flowers, gifts, picking me up from work every day. He said he fell in love with me the moment he saw me, that I was the most genuine, kind-hearted girl he'd ever met. I was swept off my feet by his sweet words and agreed to be his girlfriend. A year later, we were married. The wedding wasn't lavish, but it was warm and beautiful. I thought I had found the man I'd spend the rest of my life with. Our married life seemed happy. David was good to me. He ate dinner with me every night, and we'd go out on weekends. I thought this was what marriage was supposed to be. But looking back now, so many red flags had been waving in plain sight. David always insisted I deposit my paycheck into the joint account for financial planning. But I never saw a single bank statement in all those years. I never actually knew where the money was going. He'd often come home late, claiming he was working, but when I called, I'd hear the loud hum of a bar or restaurant in the background. He was indifferent toward my family, always making excuses to avoid visiting my parents in New Jersey for the holidays. Claiming he was slammed with work, yet he always found time for his buddies. I had made up endless excuses to convince myself my marriage was happy. Now it was crystal clear. The whole thing was a joke. At 8 p.m., David walked in. "Hey, Em. I'm home." He kissed my cheek, like always. I suppressed my disgust and smiled. "Hey, did you eat?" "Yeah, team dinner at the office," he said, taking off his jacket. "By the way, I fly out the day after tomorrow. Just wrapping up some final things at work." "So soon?" I feigned surprise. "Yeah. The project timeline is really tight." He sat on the couch. "Emma, while I'm away these next 2 years, take good care of yourself. Don't go spending money crazily." I almost laughed out loud. He was about to run off with our entire life savings and had the nerve to tell me not to spend crazily. "I won't," I said, lowering my eyes. "Take care of yourself in London, David." "I will." He took my hand. "When I get back, we'll buy that big house we always wanted, and then we'll have a baby." A baby, his and Jessica's baby. I just smiled and stayed silent. That night, we slept in the same bed, but I didn't sleep a wink. The man beside me was about to flee the country with our savings and another woman, and I still had to play my part. The next day, I went to work as usual. During my lunch break, I called the lawyer Marcus had recommended. "Hello," Marcus Thorne referred me. "I need a consultation for a divorce." "Of course. Tell me your situation." Her voice was professional and reassuring. I laid everything out. After listening, the lawyer, Miss Sterling, said, "Based on what you've described, your husband has committed adultery and is attempting to dissipate marital assets. Your action of moving the funds from the joint account to your personal account is legally sound, as it is marital property, and you have equal right to access it. So, if I file for divorce now, what can I expect?" I asked. "First, because New York allows for fault-based divorce, you can cite his adultery. When it comes to the equitable distribution of assets, since he has clearly engaged in marital waste by using joint funds to buy foreign property with his mistress, we can fight for you to receive a much larger share, if not all, of the remaining liquid assets. Furthermore, that London property was purchased with marital funds, meaning it is subject to division as well." Her analysis gave me a clear roadmap. What documents do I need to prepare? Your marriage certificate, social security numbers, evidence of the infidelity, a list of assets, bank statements, etc. Gather them, and we'll schedule a sit-down to finalize our strategy. After hanging up, I got to work. My marriage certificate and social security cards were in a drawer at home. Marcus had already provided the infidelity proof. The bank statements I could print online. Everything was ready. On my way home, my mom called. "Emma, I heard David is moving to London for work." "Yes, Mom. The company is relocating him," I said calmly. "What about you? Will you be okay by yourself?" she asked, her tone heavy with worry. "I'll be fine, Mom. I'm a grown woman. I can take care of myself. But 2 years is a long time. Maybe you should go with him." "Mom, my job is here. I can't just drop everything. Plus, he's going for work, not permanently. It wouldn't make sense for me to uproot my life. My mom sighed. I suppose you're right. Just take good care of yourself, and call me if you need anything. I will, Mom. When I hung up, I smiled bitterly. I couldn't imagine how devastated she would be if she knew I was getting a divorce. But I had no regrets. It was better to end a dead marriage than to suffer inside it. When I got home, David was packing a massive suitcase, overflowing with clothes and toiletries. Emma, come see if I'm missing anything, he called out. I walked over and peered inside. Looks like you've got everything. Great. He zipped it shut. I leave tomorrow. Let's go out for a nice dinner tonight. A little farewell. Okay, I forced a smile. We went to an upscale steakhouse in Tribeca. It was where we'd had our first date and celebrated all our anniversaries. David ordered a bottle of red wine, ribeye steaks, and my favorite New York cheesecake. Emma, these next 2 years are going to be hard on you, he said, raising his glass. When I get back, I'll make it all up to you. I raised my glass and clinked it against his. I'll be waiting. The wine tasted bittersweet, much like our marriage. Sweet on the surface, entirely bitter underneath. Oh, after I leave, if you need money for anything, just transfer it from the joint account, David added smoothly. I left plenty in there for you. I almost choked on my steak. There wasn't a dime left in that account, and he was sitting there telling me he'd left plenty. All right, I will, I said, slicing into my meat. Emma. David suddenly reached across the table and grabbed my hand. I know you'll be lonely, but you have to wait for me. Our bond is strong. We can get through this. I looked into his eyes, swimming with what looked like genuine sincerity. If I hadn't seen the evidence with my own eyes, I would have believed every word. I'll wait for you, I lied flawlessly. We got home late. David had drank quite a bit and spent the whole cab ride talking about our future. How we'd move to a bigger house, take a second honeymoon to Hawaii, have a baby. Hearing it only made me feel sick. He was going to fulfill all those promises with Jessica. I was just a stepping stone. The morning I took David to JFK Airport, I applied heavier makeup than usual, blending dark eyeshadow beneath my eyes to make my tears look more dramatic. David dragged his suitcase while I clung to his arm. We looked like any other deeply in love couple acting out a painful goodbye. Emma, don't cry. 2 years will fly by, he said, wiping my tears. I know. It's just, I can't stand seeing you leave. I sobbed. Silly. He hugged me tight. Take care of yourself. I'll call you all the time. I buried my face in his chest, letting my tears soak his shirt. It was time to board. David gave me one last kiss. Wait for me. I'll be waiting. I smiled through my tears. I stood there watching him pass through security, his figure shrinking until he vanished. There were many goodbyes happening around me. Some were crying, some laughing. No one knew what was going through the mind of the woman who looked the most shattered of all. I wiped my tears and walked away from the terminal. In the back of the cab, I checked the time on my phone. It was 1:00 a.m. I told the driver to take me home first. Once at the apartment, I took a long shower, scrubbed off all the makeup, and put on a simple, clean navy dress that made me look dignified and sharp. I sat at my vanity, staring at my reflection. The naive girl from 5 years ago was dead. In her place was a woman with absolute determination in her eyes. I picked up my phone and texted Marcus. Keep an eye on David's movements once he lands in London. The reply came instantly. Copy that. Then I texted Miss Sterling. I'll be at your office at 2 p.m. She replied, perfect. See you then. With everything organized, I grabbed my tote bag. Inside were all the necessary documents. Our marriage certificate, my ID, bank cards, and Marcus's PI report. At 11 a.m., I stepped out the door. The courthouse wasn't far, just a 20-minute walk. I decided to go on foot one last stroll to mark the end of this chapter of my life. The streets were bustling. Everyone wrapped up in their own worlds. No one noticed the woman walking toward the courthouse to terminate her 5-year marriage. At 2 p.m., I was sitting in Miss Sterling's office in Midtown Manhattan. She was a sharp, competent woman in her 40s. She offered me a seat and a bottle of water. Mrs. Evans, I've reviewed the materials you sent over. Your case is a bit complex, she said. First, your husband is out of the country, which will make serving him with divorce papers more difficult. Second, regarding the division of assets, we'll need to officially trace the marital funds used to purchase the London property. I understand, I nodded. How long do you think this will take? If everything goes smoothly, about 6 months. If he drags his feet or refuses to cooperate, it could take longer. But given the paper trail, we hold all the cards. I can wait 6 months. Let's file it now, I said. Excellent. Miss Sterling pulled out a document. This is the draft of the divorce petition. Read it over and let me know if anything needs changing. I read it carefully. The petition detailed David's faults, including his adultery and the egregious dissipation of marital assets. It looks perfect. Where do I sign? Right here. We'll file it with the court tomorrow, Miss Sterling said. As for the funds you transferred to your personal account, keep it absolutely quiet for now. If he finds out early, he might try to preemptively hide other assets. Understood, I said. No one knows but us. Walking out of the law firm, I felt lighter. The road to divorce was long, but I had taken the most crucial step. When I got home, I immediately started packing up David's things. His clothes, his books, his photos. Every object used to be part of my reality, but now they just repulsed me. I shoved it all into cardboard boxes, planning to ship them to his parents in New Jersey. Let them see what kind of son they raised. While I was packing, my phone buzzed. It was David. I took a deep breath and answered, "Hey, Emma, I just landed in London." David's voice hummed with excitement. "How was the flight?" I tried to keep my voice perfectly normal. "Great. The weather here is nice, but the jet lag is already hitting me. How was your day? Did you cry a lot?" he asked. "I'm doing okay," I said softly. "Get some rest, David. I love you." I paused for a second before saying, "I love you too." After hanging up, I stared at the call log and scoffed. He said he loved me, but all he wanted was a gullible, naive woman who would gladly hand over her paycheck. He never loved the real me. Over the next few days, I went to work as usual, and at night, I continued erasing his existence from the apartment. I boxed up the last of his things and scheduled the freight pickup. I rearranged the furniture and took down every photo of us. The apartment slowly transformed into a space that was entirely mine. Without his presence, I felt nothing but freedom. 5 days later, Miss Sterling called. "Emma, the petition has been officially filed and processed by the court." "That was fast," I said, surprised. "Your documentation was bulletproof, so it sailed through," she said. "The court will now issue a summons. Because he's international, we'll use a specialized process server to formally notify him. He will have a set period to respond. If he ignores it, we can file for a default judgment." "Okay, I understand." I hung up and let out a long breath. Everything was moving exactly according to plan. That evening, David FaceTimed me. On the screen, he was sitting in an unfamiliar, ultra-modern living room with floor-to-ceiling windows showing the London skyline lit up against the night sky. "Emma, look, this is my corporate housing in London," he said, panning his phone around. "Pretty sweet, huh?" I looked at the luxurious flat and sneered inwardly. That had to be the Kensington flat he bought with our money. "It's beautiful," I said. "Are you living there all by yourself?" "Yeah, it's a one-bedroom the company set up for me," he smiled smoothly. "It feels a bit empty, though. It would be perfect if you were here with me." I almost laughed. He was likely sitting on the couch with Jessica just out of frame, yet he was still putting on an Oscar-worthy performance. "When you get back, we'll be together again," I said. "Yeah, I'm going to miss you." When the call ended, I sat on the couch, entirely numb to his lies. The man's acting skills were terrifying. If I hadn't seen the receipts, he would have played me for a fool until the very end. A week later, Marcus sent me a new report. There were photos of David and Jessica in London, grocery shopping together, cooking together, walking through Hyde Park together. They looked like newlyweds. There was also a photo of them walking out of a high-end real estate office. Marcus's note read, "They were looking at investment properties in Surrey. planning to take out a mortgage using a shell company tied to your husband. I saved all the photos as fresh evidence. When Miss Sterling saw them, she didn't miss a beat. With this, we can petition the judge for a temporary restraining order on his finances to freeze his assets and prevent any further dissipation. Do it, I said. Don't worry, Emma, Miss Sterling said fiercely. I am going to make sure you get the best possible outcome. Men like your husband need to pay for what they do. I nodded. Yes. He did. 2 weeks later, David was formally served with the divorce summons. That night, my phone blew up. He called, his voice trembling with sheer rage. Emma, are you out of your mind? Why the hell did you file for divorce? Because I know about you and Jessica, I said evenly. Dead silence on the line for 3 agonizing seconds. What? What are you talking about? I don't understand, David stammered, panic bleeding through his anger. Drop the act, David, I sneered. I know you aren't in London for work. I know you're living with Jessica. I know you used our savings to buy a flat there, and I know you never planned on coming back. Emma, listen to me. Let me explain. I'm done listening to your explanations. I cut him off. I've filed the papers. I'll see you in court. How dare you? He suddenly exploded. You transferred all the money out of our joint account, didn't you? I went to check it today and it's empty. That is marital property. You had no right. David's mask finally shattered. The vast majority of that money was my paycheck. What's wrong with me taking what's mine? I shot back. And what about you? Buying real estate in a foreign country with marital funds, isn't that hiding assets? David went dead silent. Emma, you're going to regret this, he threatened, his voice dropping to a vicious whisper. What do you think you're going to get out of this divorce? You won't get a dime from me. We'll see about that, I said, and hung up. My hands were shaking. Even though I was prepared, the actual confrontation still stung. Over the next few days, David relentlessly called and texted, sometimes begging for forgiveness, sometimes hurling threats. I ignored all of it. I poured all my energy into my job and the impending legal battle. Miss Sterling was a powerhouse. She helped me organize an airtight case. The evidence of his infidelity, the paper trail of the asset transfers, and my W-2s and pay stubs from the last 5 years, proving I was the primary contributor to that account. Emma, your case is exceptionally strong, she assured me. Your husband is entirely at fault, and his blatant attempt to hide marital assets abroad looks terrible to a judge. It is almost a guarantee the court will rule heavily in your favor. Thank you, Miss Sterling. It's my job. She smiled. Stay strong. This will all be over soon. A month later, we had our hearing. David didn't fly back. He had a lawyer represent him. Everything went exactly as planned. Miss Sterling presented the mountain of evidence to the judge. David's lawyer weakly attempted to claim the photos were taken out of context, and the London flat was purely a business investment. But faced with the text messages and financial records, his arguments collapsed. The judge adjourned to review the materials, stating the judgment would be issued shortly. Walking out of the courtroom. Miss Sterling patted my shoulder. You did great, Emma. Now we just wait for the good news. The day the judgment arrived, the New York sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. Miss Sterling called me. Emma, the judge signed off. The court ruled in our favor. The divorce is granted. Regarding the assets, you are legally awarded the entire balance you transferred from the joint account, plus you are entitled to half the equity of the London property your ex-husband purchased. Furthermore, the judge ordered him to pay your legal fees and an additional $10,000 for egregious dissipation of assets. Hearing those words, I broke down crying, not out of sadness, but sheer, unadulterated relief. I was finally free. Thank you, Miss Sterling. Thank you so much, I sobbed. You earned this, she said gently. Now go live your life. Leave the past behind and start fresh. I will. Hanging up, I stood by the window of my office looking out at the city. 5 years of marriage, over just like that. I thought I would be devastated. But in that moment, all I felt was profound liberation. That night, I went out to dinner with my closest friends. Emma, cheers to your freedom, my best friend Rachel toasted. I raised my glass and clinked it against hers. Thank you for standing by me through all this. That miserable bastard got exactly what he deserved. my other friend Chloe said fiercely. After everything you did for him, betraying you like that. Let's leave the past in the past, I smiled. From now on, I'm living for myself. I'm not wasting another second on people who don't deserve it. Here, Rachel cheered. To Emma's new life. Life after the divorce was completely different from what I had feared. I thought I would be depressed, crying myself to sleep every night. Instead, I felt like I could finally breathe. Without David, I didn't have to worry about what time he'd get home. I didn't have to walk on eggshells to please him. I didn't have to hand over my hard-earned paycheck. I completely redesigned my life. First, I overhauled the Brooklyn apartment. I threw out anything that remotely reminded me of David. I bought new furniture, painted the walls a bright, airy white, and bought dozens of houseplants. The place felt fresh and alive, just like me. Second, I signed up for a Pilates studio. I went every day after work. It was incredible for my mind and body. I also started taking advanced cooking classes. When David was around, I always cooked the heavy, classic American comfort food he liked, pot roasts, mac and cheese. Now, I learned to cook Thai, authentic Italian, whatever I craved. I started traveling, too. I packed my bags and flew to places I'd always wanted to see, but never could, because David didn't have time. I went to the Amalfi Coast, hiked in Sedona, explored Tokyo. I met fascinating people and heard incredible stories. I realized the world was so much bigger than my failed marriage, and there was so much worth living for. 6 months later, David's mother tracked me down. Emma, can you please find it in your heart to forgive David? He knows he made a terrible mistake, she pleaded, gripping my hand with tear-filled eyes. I gently pulled my hand away. I'm sorry, Mrs. Evans. I can't. But you were married for 5 years. You had such a deep bond. How can you just throw it all away? She begged. A relationship can't survive on the effort of just one Shen said, calmly. David was unfaithful and tried to steal my life savings. Those are facts. I cannot forgive that. He was just confused for a moment. That woman seduced him, she cried frantically. He's already broken up with her. He wants to come back to you. I let out a cold laugh. He broke up with her because the court ordered him to pay me out of his equity. And now his finances are a mess. He's broke. Her face paled. I know it hurts, and I know you pity your son, I said. But please understand my position. David and I are legally divorced. We are never getting back together. Please don't come looking for me again. With that, I turned and walked away. I heard her sobbing behind me, but I didn't look back. I knew I was being cold, but I had zero regrets. David had his chance. He threw it in the garbage. A few months later, I met a man named Ryan Mitchell at work. He was the new head of marketing for our division. A few years older than me, he was grounded, mature, and incredibly charming. We got to know each other while collaborating on a major ad campaign. He was always kind to me, frequently helping me navigate office politics. One day, he invited me to dinner. Emma, I heard through the grapevine that you're divorced, he said bluntly over drinks. I was a bit taken aback, but I nodded. Yes. Are you seeing anyone right now? He asked, looking me dead in the eye. I shook my head. No. Then do I have a chance to ask you out? He said with striking sincerity. I know it might be soon, but I really like you. I admire your independence, your resilience, your kindness. I want to take care of you. I looked into his honest eyes and felt a flutter in my chest, but I still shook my head. I'm sorry, Ryan. I'm just not ready for a new relationship right now. I understand, he said softly. Then I'll wait. However long it takes, I'll wait. That night, I sat on my balcony looking at the Manhattan skyline. Maybe one day I would believe in love again. But for now, I just wanted to love myself. A year later, the court settlement was fully executed. David was forced to liquidate assets to pay my legal fees, damages, and transfer the cash equivalent of half his London property. Combined with the $75,000 from the joint account, I had nearly $1 million saved. It was more than enough to live comfortably. I used part of the money to open a small, artisanal coffee shop on the ground floor of a building in my neighborhood. It wasn't massive, but it was cozy, lined with exposed brick and warm lighting. Every morning, I brewed lattes and cortados for the locals. In the afternoons, I'd sit by the front window, read a book, and soak in the sun. Life became wonderfully simple. One day, Rachel came to visit the cafe. "Emma, you look genuinely radiant now," she smiled. "I feel it," I smiled back. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked suddenly. I thought about it for a second and shook my head. No. Zero regrets. That marriage caused me a lot of pain, but it also forced me to grow up. I learned how to protect myself, how not to trust blindly, and most importantly, how to love myself. Will you ever trust love again? I looked at the sunlight streaming through the glass and smiled. Yes, but next time, I'll be smarter, more rational. I will never abandon myself for the sake of love, ever again. Rachel nodded approvingly. You've changed for the better. I had. I was no longer the gullible girl who was so easily manipulated. I had forged myself into an independent, strong woman who knew exactly what she wanted. 2 years later, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, a familiar figure walked into my coffee shop. It was David. He looked haggard. There were deep lines around his eyes and noticeable gray in his hair. "Emma," he said, his voice cracking. I looked at him with total indifference. "What are you doing here?" I just wanted to apologize," he said, looking at the floor. "I'm so sorry for everything." I didn't say a word. I just stared at him. "I know I did terrible things. I destroyed you," he continued miserably. "I regret it every single day. I know it's too late, but I just needed to say it. I'm sorry." "Okay. I heard you," I said flatly. "Anything else?" David looked completely thrown off. He shook his head. "Then please leave," I said, pointing toward the door. He looked at me, his eyes brimming with anguish. "Emma, do you really not hate me anymore?" I paused. "I used to hate you. I hated you so much I wanted to watch you burn. But I don't anymore. I realize that holding on to hate is exhausting. You just aren't worth the energy. Are you happy now?" He whispered. "Incredibly happy." I smiled genuinely. "Happier than I ever was a single day with you." Those words hit him like a physical blow. He let out a broken, bitter laugh, turned around, and walked out of the cafe. Watching his back disappear down the Brooklyn sidewalk, I realized the man I had once loved desperately was now nothing more than a stranger. Time is a miraculous thing. It heals wounds. Now my days were full and peaceful. I'd wake up, do yoga for an hour, and make myself a quiet breakfast. At 9 a.m., I'd open the shop. For lunch, I'd make something simple, a panini or a salad. In the evenings, I'd read up on psychology, a subject I had recently grown fascinated by. On weekends, I'd hike upstate or visit the Met. Life was quiet but beautiful. Most importantly, I had found myself. I didn't need to rely on anyone. I could face the world entirely on my own terms. 6 months ago, Ryan asked me out again. "Emma, I've been waiting for 2 years," he said gently. "I know you've been through hell, and I'm not pushing you, but I want you to know I'm still here." In that moment, looking at his steadfast, patient eyes, I decided to take a leap. "Ryan," I said, "I'm willing to try." His face lit up in pure euphoria, and he pulled me into a tight embrace. "Really? You mean it?" I smiled against his chest. "But I have to be honest. I don't know if I love you yet. I'm just willing to give us a chance. That's enough." "That's more than enough," he promised. "I'll prove to you with my actions that I'm worthy of your love." We've been together ever since. He is wonderful to me. Sweet, attentive, and deeply understanding. He respects my boundaries, champions my business, and never pressures me into anything. Being with him feels safe and liberating. This is what real love should feel like. Not a chaotic hurricane of passion, but a steady, nurturing stream. Not possession, but respect. Not a cage, but wings. I didn't know what the future held, but I was ready to embrace it, knowing that as long as I remained strong and independent, no one could ever destroy me again. A few days ago, I got a message from an old mutual friend. They told me David and Jessica had a catastrophic falling out. She dumped him the second she realized his assets were seized and his corporate gig had fired him for ethical violations. Now he was stranded in London, drowning in debt and struggling to make rent. He had asked the friend to see if I would lend him money to get back on his feet. I looked at the text and smiled. I typed back, "Sorry, I can't help." Then I permanently blocked the number. Not because I'm heartless, but because his misery is the direct consequence of his own horrific choices. When he was lying to my face and stealing my future, did he care if I ended up on the street? No, I am not an emotional dumping ground. Last week, I attended a college alumni networking event in Manhattan. Everyone was catching up. Some were VPs, some had their second kid, some were going through messy divorces. When it was my turn, I said brightly, "I'm divorced, I own my own business, I have a wonderful new partner, and I am happier than I have ever been." People were surprised, but they clapped. One classmate asked, "Emma, don't you regret the divorce at all? You invested 5 years into that marriage." I shook my head. Zero regrets. If I hadn't divorced him, I'd still be living inside a lie. The divorce was agonizing, but it allowed me to find myself. "You're incredibly brave," another woman said softly. "A lot of women in your shoes would have just swallowed it for the sake of the family." We didn't have kids, which made the logistics easier, I noted. But even if we did, an incredibly toxic, deceitful household is infinitely more damaging to a child than 2 separate, healthy lives. Everyone nodded in agreement. That night, I had a glass of wine on my balcony, watching the city lights glitter like diamonds. I thought about the woman I was 3 years ago, sobbing at JFK. I thought my world was ending. Yet here I am, living a life I couldn't have even dreamed of back then. Today, a special customer walked into my cafe. She was young, maybe early 20s. She ordered a latte and sat in a corner booth, crying silently. I walked over and gently slid a napkin across her table. "Do you need this?" She looked up, her eyes red and puffy. "Thank you." I sat down across from her. "If you don't mind me asking, do you want to talk about it?" She hesitated, then spilled everything. She had just found out her boyfriend was cheating on her. She didn't know whether to stay or leave. "He says it was a one-time mistake. He says he still loves me," she choked out. "But I feel so betrayed. I don't know what to do." Looking at her was like looking in a mirror. "Listen to me," I said with absolute conviction. "There is no such thing as just one time when it comes to cheating. It is either 0 times or it's countless times. If you forgive him, he will do it again. And someone who truly loves you would never, ever inflict that kind of trauma on you. But we've been together for 3 years. I don't want to throw all that away," she sobbed. 3 years is a long time, I agreed. "But if this relationship is poisoning you, it is not worth holding on to. You have to learn to love and respect yourself first. Do not waste your best years on a man who doesn't value you." She looked at me, tears gleaming in her eyes. "You're right. I know what I have to do." I smiled. "Good for you. You will find someone vastly better." Watching her walk out with her head held a little higher, I realized my trauma had a purpose. It gave me the strength to pull other women out of the dark. 3 months later, I was closing out the register when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello, is this Miss Emma Davis?" a stern female voice asked. "Yes, speaking. This is Agent Brooks from the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division," she stated. "We are contacting you regarding your ex-husband, David Evans." My heart skipped a beat. "What happened?" "Mr. Evans has been arrested for international wire fraud and embezzlement," the agent explained. "According to our investigation, he has been operating a massive Ponzi scheme for several years, defrauding investors out of more than $20 million. I was stunned into silence. Furthermore, Agent Brooks continued, "Before his arrest, he drafted a sworn statement attempting to implicate you. He claims that the marital funds you were awarded in the divorce were actually seed money for his illegal enterprises, and he is attempting to claim the London property was a joint criminal asset. The DOJ is freezing his assets, and we need to clarify your involvement." My hands began to tremble. He also stated, the agent paused, her tone softening slightly, that he never actually loved you, and only married you to secure a clean financial front. The voice on the other end kept speaking, but the room was spinning. My call waiting beeped. It was Ryan. I understand, Agent. I will have my attorney contact you, I managed to say before hanging up. Before I could answer Ryan, the cafe door violently swung open. A heavy-set, frantic man stormed in, locking his eyes on me. Emma Evans, I know who you are. I'm one of David's investors. You owe me my goddamn money. I stared at the stranger, forcing myself to swallow my panic. The few remaining customers gasped. Sir, I need you to calm down and step back, I said, projecting a loud, firm voice. David and I are legally divorced. I have nothing to do with his business or his debts. Bullshit, he spat, stepping closer. You were his wife. Do you know what marital debt is? He owes me $500,000 and you're going to pay it. I need to see a legally binding promissory note signed by me, I fired back, my adrenaline surging, and proof that those funds were used for our marital estate during our marriage. Otherwise, I don't owe you a single cent. Now get out of my store. The man blinked, clearly taken aback by my refusal to cower. At that exact moment, Ryan burst through the door, having rushed over when I didn't answer my phone. Emma, are you okay? He immediately stepped between me and the angry man. Sir, I don't know who you are, but this will be handled through proper legal channels, Ryan said, his voice dangerously low. If you take one more step toward my partner, I am calling the NYPD. The man looked at Ryan, then at the phones being held up by my baristas. He scoffed. Fine. I'll see you in court, bitch. He turned and slammed the door behind him. Ryan immediately locked the deadbolt and wrapped his arms around me. Oh my God. You must have been terrified. I collapsed into his chest, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had put on a brave face, but I was terrified. I'm so glad you're here, I whispered. I told you I'd always protect you, he murmured, kissing the top of my head. What was he talking about? Debts? I told him about the FBI call. Ryan's jaw tightened. That absolute sociopath. What else has he dragged you into? I don't know, I sighed shakily. I thought when the divorce was finalized, I was free. I never expected this. Don't panic, Ryan said firmly. Tomorrow morning, we go straight to Miss Sterling. You are legally divorced. The asset division was finalized by a judge. His federal crimes have absolutely nothing to do with you. I nodded, but the dread sat heavy in my stomach. That night, I couldn't sleep. The FBI agent's words kept echoing in my skull. He claimed he never actually loved you, and only married you to secure a clean financial front. The betrayal ran deeper than I ever could have imagined. I was nothing but a pawn from day one. The next morning, Ryan sat beside me in Miss Sterling's office. After reviewing the facts, she let out a reassuring sigh. Emma, you don't need to lose sleep over this. First, you are legally divorced, and the division of assets was a court-ordered mandate. Second, under the law, debts incurred by one spouse for illegal activities or individual schemes that did not benefit the marital household are not considered joint marital debt. The burden of proof is entirely on his creditors to prove you were complicit, which you weren't. And what about the $500,000 that man demanded? I asked. Let him try to sue. He has to prove the debt was incurred during the marriage and utilized for joint living expenses, Miss Sterling scoffed. Given it was a Ponzi scheme, he can't. And the FBI? David told them the London property was bought with dirty money to drag me down. Miss Sterling pulled up my file. You were awarded the cash equivalent of that property's equity before any federal indictments, making you a bona fide purchaser for value, meaning you are an innocent third party. The DOJ cannot claw back court-ordered divorce settlements from an innocent spouse who had zero knowledge of the crimes. Your money is perfectly safe. Hearing her lay it out legally, the suffocating weight finally lifted off my chest. However, Miss Sterling added, be prepared for harassment. His investors are desperate. Keep a copy of your divorce decree at the cafe. If anyone steps foot on your property demanding money, you call 911 immediately for trespassing. I understand. Thank you, Miss Sterling. Walking out of the building, Ryan squeezed my hand. See? I told you, you're bulletproof. I looked up at him, a profound warmth filling my soul. Over the next few weeks, a few more desperate investors showed up, waving fake promissory notes and demanding payouts. Following Miss Sterling's advice, I didn't engage. I just called the police. Miss Sterling fired off cease and desist letters, threatening them with harassment lawsuits, and quickly, the mob backed off. But the ordeal took a toll. Customers were spooked, and my anxiety flared up, constantly waiting for the next shoe to drop. Ryan saw how exhausted I was. Emma, why don't we temporarily close the cafe? Give it a few months to blow over. You can take a break. I shook my head fiercely. No, I am not letting David's mess ruin my life again. I fought too hard to build this. I am not hiding. Ryan looked at me, pure admiration in his eyes. Okay. I've got your back. But if it gets to be too much, you tell me. I promise. A month later, the FBI released a public statement. David's case was airtight. He had defrauded investors and funneled the money into offshore accounts. He was facing decades in federal prison. The DOJ formally cleared me of any wrongdoing, acknowledging I was merely another victim of his manipulation. My life finally returned to normal, but the experience left a permanent mark. I realized the past will always try to claw its way back into your present, and you have to be armed and ready to sever the head every time. That evening, I got a call from a federal corrections facility. It was David. Emma. Please don't hang up. His voice sounded hollow, defeated. I paused. Speak. I wanted to tell the truth. He rasped. The FBI agent told you what I said, that I only married you for a financial front. It was true. In the beginning, I targeted you. You were sweet, naive, with a spotless credit score and a steady paycheck. I needed someone to anchor my legitimate finances while I ran my schemes. I felt a sharp prick behind my eyes, but I kept my voice steady. I figured. I thought I could pull it off. I thought I'd make tens of millions, and eventually give you a lavish life to make up for using you, he laughed miserably. But my greed destroyed everything. Jessica found out the feds were circling and drained the offshore accounts before she vanished. What do you want, David? I asked coldly. I just want you to know, even though I started with a motive. Over those 5 years, I really did fall in love with you, he cried. I was just too stupid and greedy to stop. I closed my eyes, took a breath, and spoke with absolute clarity. David, do you know what the worst part of all this is? It's not that you stole my money. It's that you weaponized my empathy. For 5 years, I gave you my whole heart, and you viewed me as a human shield. You don't know what love is. I know, he wept, but I want to thank you, I said. Thank you for showing me exactly who you are, forcing me to cut you out of my life. If you hadn't, I might have spent my entire life as your gullible pawn. Emma, please. This is the last time you will ever hear my voice. I hope you rot in that cell, and I hope you come out a different man. I hung up the phone and blocked the prison's automated number. I sat on the sofa, feeling strangely hollow. Ryan came out of the kitchen and sat beside me. Are you okay? I shook my head, then nodded. I'm not sad. I just feel regret. Regret for giving 5 years of my life to a sociopath. But I don't regret the fire it put me through. It made me who I am. Ryan took my hands and kissed my knuckles. You know what I love most about you, Emma? Your resilience. You went through absolute hell, and you didn't let it turn you bitter. You let it make you a warrior. I leaned against his chest, tears finally spilling over. Thank you for standing by me, Ryan. I don't know if I could have survived these last few months without you. We're a team. That's what teams do, he said softly. And you gave me the greatest gift by letting me love you. We stayed up late talking about our future. Ryan told me he wanted to marry me. I told him I wanted that too, but I just needed a little more time to make sure my baggage was fully unpacked. He promised he wasn't going anywhere. 6 months later, the cafe was booming. I hired 2 incredible women to manage the floor, Chloe, a sharp college grad, and Maria, a hardworking mother of 2. With them running the day-to-day, I had time to breathe. I took up a photography class, capturing the vibrant street life of Brooklyn. I also started writing. I wrote brutal, honest essays about surviving financial abuse and divorce, and pitched them to online magazines. To my shock, a major publication picked them up. I started receiving hundreds of emails from women across the country who felt trapped in toxic marriages, asking for advice. I replied to as many as I could. I told them that a woman does not need a man to validate her existence. I told them that walking away from abuse is not a failure, but a rebirth. Last winter, Ryan took me for a weekend getaway to the Hamptons. The beach was freezing, the wind whipping off the Atlantic, but bundled in his coat, I felt nothing but warmth. We were walking along the shoreline when Ryan suddenly stopped. He turned to me, dropped to one knee in the sand, and pulled a velvet box from his pocket. Inside sat a stunning, elegant diamond ring. "Emma Davis," he said, holding my gaze through the freezing wind. "I know you survived a nightmare, and I know marriage terrified you. But I swear to you, I am not him. I will spend the rest of my life loving you, protecting you, and being your true partner. I will never lie to you. I just want to walk beside you for the rest of our lives. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down my face. "Ryan," I choked out, "if you need more time, I'll wait," he smiled gently. "However long it takes." I shook my head furiously, laughing through my tears. "No, I'm done waiting. Yes, yes, I will." He jumped up, slipped the ring onto my freezing finger, and spun me around in the air. The ocean roared beside us, but grounded in his arms. I had never felt more secure. Our wedding was incredibly intimate. We rented out a beautiful greenhouse in Brooklyn Botanic Garden and invited only our closest friends and family. No massive ballroom, no superficial guests, just pure, unfiltered love. My mom held my hands, weeping tears of joy. "Emma, seeing you this happy. It's all I ever wanted." "I am happy, Mom," I smiled. During his vows, Ryan looked at me and said, "Emma, thank you for trusting me with your heart. I promise to be the safe harbor you always deserved." I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, I had chosen right. Married life with Ryan is a revelation. He rubs my shoulders when I'm stressed, cooks dinner when I work late, and makes me laugh until my ribs ache. He never once asked me to step back from my business. In fact, he routinely helps me run the cafe's marketing. We are true equals. This past spring, I found out I was pregnant. I was terrified and elated all at once. Ryan was over the moon. He bought a library's worth of parenting books and insisted on coming to every single ultrasound. "Who do you think she'll look like?" he'd ask, pressing his hand against my swelling belly. "Hopefully you, so she's charming," I'd tease. "I hope she looks exactly like you, so she's fierce," he'd reply. During my 5th month of pregnancy, I received a forwarded letter from the federal penitentiary. It was from David's mother. She apologized for her son's horrific actions. She said she was deeply ashamed of the monster she raised, but noted that David was taking responsibility in prison and attending rehabilitation programs. She wished me a beautiful, happy life. Reading it, I felt a profound sense of closure. I wrote her back, telling her I held no malice toward her. She was a victim of his lies, too. I told her I had moved on. I was happy, and I genuinely hoped David would emerge from prison rehabilitated. Sending that letter felt like severing the final invisible chain, linking me to my past. Last autumn, our daughter was born. We named her Lily. Holding her tiny, fragile body, I promised I would raise her in a home overflowing with respect and love. I will teach her to be kind, but I will also teach her to be armed. I will teach her that a woman can be soft without being weak, but above all else, she must fiercely love herself first. Last month, I hosted a special after-hours event at the cafe. I invited local women who were navigating divorce or toxic relationships to come share their stories in a safe space. The room was packed. Some were fresh out of court, raw and hurting. Others were standing on the precipice, terrified to leave. I stood at the front and shared my story. I told them about the $75,000. I told them about the FBI. I told them about the agonizing climb out of the abyss. I know it is terrifying, I told the silent room. I know you feel like your life is over. But I promise you, the pain is temporary. If you take that terrifying leap, there is a beautiful, brilliantly lit world waiting for you on the other side. I'm just so scared of being alone, a young woman in the back whispered. Being alone is infinitely better than being trapped in a room with someone who makes you feel lonely, I replied firmly. And you are not alone. You have yourselves. Once you fall in love with your own independence, the right people will gravitate toward you. Are you truly happy now? An older woman asked. I looked toward the back of the cafe. Ryan was standing by the espresso machine, holding Lily against his chest, smiling proudly at me. I am, I beamed, happier than I ever thought possible. This year marks the 5-year anniversary of my divorce. Over the last 5 years, I went from a naive, codependent girl to a fiercely independent woman. I went from a victim of financial and emotional abuse to a mentor for others fighting the same battles. I went from a shattered marriage to a beautiful, thriving family. And it was all because of that one brave, terrifying decision I made. If I hadn't marched into the bank that day, if I hadn't filed those papers, I would still be a pawn in someone else's sick game. Last week, I was a guest speaker at a women's empowerment summit in Manhattan. When I took the podium, I looked out at the sea of faces. 5 years ago, people told me I was impulsive and crazy for filing for a fault-based divorce against my perfect husband, I said into the microphone. But today, I can stand here and tell you that it was the greatest decision of my life. The crowd erupted into applause. In my first marriage, I surrendered my identity, my finances, and my boundaries because I was taught that self-sacrifice was the definition of love, I continued. But love that requires the erasure of your soul is not love at all. So I urge all of you, whether you are single, dating, or married for decades, never lose yourselves. You can give your heart, but never hand over your autonomy. Because true happiness only comes when you are strong enough to stand on your own. The ballroom gave a standing ovation. Last night, I was putting Lily in her crib when she looked up at me and babbled, "Mama." Tears sprang to my eyes. I kissed her soft forehead. "Mama will always protect you," I promised silently. "I will raise you to be unbreakable." Ryan came into the nursery and wrapped his arms around my waist from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. "We did good," he whispered. I leaned back into him, looking at our daughter, my heart overflowing. This is the life I fought for. A fiercely loyal husband, a beautiful daughter, a thriving business, and a community of friends. I don't need to depend on anyone ever again. I built this life with my own 2 hands, and I will navigate the rest of it entirely by my own rules.